Hi. Today I want to introduce you to the challenge framework. It's a simple framework that we use at Exemplify to help us identify the best course of action on projects. It's very simple. It's based on going back to basics. It's the culmination of 20 years of experience on projects, working in the trenches and just coming across the same problems again and again. So it's very simple. It's 6 themes, 6 pillars, and they are as follows: clarity, score the biggest goal, little and often, brand and position, talk, and complexity kills. So those areas basically cover understanding and being clear about what is being asked for, what is required, and what will be delivered. Making sure that you focus and prioritize on the biggest wins, the biggest goals, the things that are really going to have impact and value to customers. Little and often, the idea of continuously deploying changes and updates and results so that you get interim feedback during the development of the project, during the production of outputs, rather than waiting until the very end and you find out that it's great, everyone loves it, or it's not great, it's not what was required. Brand and position, the ability to very clearly and succinctly communicate what your project's about, why anyone should care it's being delivered, and how the world looks after it's been delivered, what the benefits, what the results, what the story of that project is going to be. Talk, as we're doing now, the idea of constant and right size and appropriate communication before the project starts, during the project, and once the project's completed. Once you deliver the project over the line, that isn't the end of the exercise. That's really the beginning of delivering and deriving the benefits and value of the project that was delivered. And then complexity kills, the idea that it's very simple, very easy to just kind of slip into the idea of just a little bit more, or adding a little bit of nuance, or pandering to a particular customer's desires or needs or wants, and the idea that just very insidiously complexity creeps up on a project, and it's one area that in particular can really damage the results and the outcome and the value and the benefits. So just rolling back to each of the areas then, so clarity talks about the idea of very clearly understanding what it is you're delivering, why you're delivering it, which is really important, when, for whom, how. It's being clear about the requirements, understanding the value of the results that are being delivered, and really just being able to communicate that in a very succinct, clear, and consistent way across the project. Scoring the biggest goal then, as I said, it really talks to prioritizing what is of greatest value to the customer. So in the idea of maybe you're delivering 10 things, probably 1 or 2 of them are really important and really valuable, and the customer can probably live without either entirely or live without, in a very sophisticated solution sense, the other areas. And again, during the course of the project, it's quite easy to get swept up in the idea of, well, if we could just change that, that would make it more attractive, or while we're doing that, because we've got this resource or this other project going, maybe we can bring them together and add some additional sort of value there. Yes, perhaps that's possible and perhaps that's the right idea, but oftentimes it's better just to say, we'll deliver something that's of simple, high value to the customer. We'll put everything else on the backlog, and then on the checklist for future projects, and then we'll come back to it and reprioritize it once we've got feedback from the customer, which leads into the third area, little and often, the idea of delivering increments of the outcome from the project, if that's possible. It's not always possible, but generally it's possible to deliver interim steps and stages through the project, and obviously you get feedback then from the customer about whether that's of value, whether that's of use, whether you're heading in the right direction or not. And it's obviously easier and cheaper to change things whilst they're still either on paper or in prototype than when they're kind of fully formed and ready for release. That's very much an agile principle, and we'll come on to the different methodologies in future videos, but it's principles that I think you can apply to any project. The idea of delivering small increments over a period of time to elicit and generate feedback from customers, and then use that feedback to inform the next piece of work, the next slice of that project which gets released and delivered. Branding and positioning. So historically, in my experience, this is a weak area of project management. What it is being delivered is being communicated, and its value and importance and relevance to the customer, either internal or external, is very clearly and consistently communicated. And just like any real brand in the real world, physical or digital brand, people need to be exposed to that message at least 7 or 8 times, very consistently, very clearly, before it starts to sink in and before they start to get it. So if you talk to somebody about your project and you say, oh, and we're delivering this, and next time they say, well, yeah, we're delivering kind of this, and the third time you say, well, probably going to deliver this, and maybe it'll be slightly nuanced from that, that's 3 different messages. Perhaps subtly different, perhaps quite significantly different, but in any case, they're different. And therefore those receivers of that information don't have the time or ability or interest perhaps to take all that on board. The idea that we can consistently message a simple, self-contained soundbite almost in a very clear and consistent way, I think it's really invaluable and really important. Talk. So that really talks to the idea of communication. And again, it needs to be thought about, it needs to be planned for, it needs to be executed well. Again, in my experience, it's an area of general weakness. The requirement for a project comes down. We've got to deliver something really quickly. Just get on with it, please. People tend to focus on the activity within the project, and again, the communication across the project and outside of the project tends to take a back seat, or sometimes gets forgotten entirely. And then kind of towards the end of the project, when it's nearly ready to release, people then go, all right, okay, well, we better tell people about this project and what it's delivering. And by then it's possibly too late, or at least it's delaying the understanding and therefore the value and the benefits that can be realized from that project. So the ability to talk about a project, again, using the brand and positioning principles, that pillar, in a very clear, consistent way from very early on in the project, during the project, giving people updates and information about how it's going, what it's being delivered, why it's being delivered, who it's going to benefit, and what the world will look like after it's delivered, during the project and then after the project as well, just to wrap up that story, to complete that circle, if you will. The risk there, I think, is that if the communication isn't consistent and the value isn't obvious and present on the day-to-day basis, that sometimes that value gets lost, or the value and relevance of the project diminishes, and people kind of fall back on old habits. They go back to their old ways. So the final pillar, complexity kills, that talks to the idea of kind of the insidious nature of complexity. You can read an awful lot from people like Steve Jobs and people who've written about him, the ethos and mentality at Apple. And it sounds very simple. You try and deliver something that's very simple. But the insidious nature of complexity, I think, is really interesting and something to try and bear in mind, because complexity just kind of creeps up on you, and it creeps up on projects. The idea, let's say, of developing and delivering 2 or 3 things, perhaps one's more important, 2 are less important, but there's a desire to embellish or broaden or make some area of the project more useful for a particular subset of customers or beneficiaries, and all those things in and of themselves aren't a problem, but they need to be thought about and considered in a very deliberate, structured way. That's really the 6 areas of the challenge framework. Clarity, scoring the biggest goal, little and often, brand and position, talk, 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 complexity kills. I hope you found that useful. It's something that we're going to keep coming back to in future videos. I'm going to drill down into each of those areas in more detail, and then we're going to talk about practical implications and practical tips and tricks to help you incorporate that thinking in your daily routines. If you enjoyed the video, please click subscribe, click a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, thumbs down, and please leave comments in the comment section so that I can improve and incorporate those into future videos.